Good evening. It is Wednesday, April 28th, and you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 11:44 p.m. Eastern Time launch from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. My name is Jesse Anderson, a lead manufacturing engineer here at SpaceX, joining you from our headquarters in Hawthorne, California. You're watching a live webcast for our 25th Starlink mission. The last couple of weeks have been particularly exciting for the SpaceX team. Most notably, we just launched 4 astronauts to the space station, helping to bring the total number of astronauts in orbit to a cozy 11. On Friday, April 23rd at 5:49 a.m. Eastern Time, Falcon 9 lifted off, sending the Dragon spacecraft to orbit from historic Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. After just under 24 hours, SpaceX's Dragon autonomously docked with the International Space Station on Saturday, April 24th at 5:08 a.m. Eastern Time. As part of the commercial crew program, NASA astronauts Shane Kimbrough and Megan MacArthur, JAXA astronaut Aki Hoshide, and ESA astronaut Thomas Pesquet flew aboard the Dragon spacecraft on its second operational mission to the space station. This was the first time Dragon flew 2 international partners and was also the first time that 2 Crew Dragons have been attached simultaneously to the orbiting laboratory. This was also the first human spaceflight mission to fly astronauts on a flight-proven Falcon 9 and flight-proven Dragon. The Falcon 9 first stage supporting this mission previously launched the Crew 1 mission in November of 2020, and the Dragon spacecraft previously flew Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley to and from the International Space Station during SpaceX's Demo 2 mission in 2020. After an approximate 6-month stay, Dragon and Crew 2 astronauts will depart from the space station no earlier than October 31st for return to Earth and splash down in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Florida. And speaking of splashdowns, while Crew 2 is just beginning their mission on station, Crew 1 is getting ready to splash down in just a few days. Crew 1 NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, and Shannon Walker, as well as Suichi Noguchi of JAXA, are scheduled to undock from the space station to begin their journey home at 5:55 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, April 30th, with splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean targeted for 11:36 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, May 1st. The Crew 1 astronauts have been aboard the space station for nearly 6 months conducting science and research experiments, so we're excited to bring them home in just a few short days. And as if flying humans to and from the space station wasn't exciting enough, NASA announced that they have selected Starship to land the first astronauts on the lunar surface since the Apollo program. Only 24 humans have been to the moon, including NASA astronaut Michael Collins, who passed away earlier today at the age of 90. Collins served as the pilot on the Apollo 11 mission that helped define a pivotal moment for our nation. It's been nearly 50 years since humanity last stepped foot on the moon, and we are honored to follow the path Michael Collins helped lay out years ago. Working with NASA to support a permanent human presence on the moon will require the safe and affordable transportation of crew and significant amounts of cargo. SpaceX's Starship spacecraft and Super Heavy rocket represent an integrated and fully reusable launch, propellant delivery, rendezvous, and planetary lander system. Flying between lunar orbit and the surface of the moon, Starship will carry crew and all of its supplies, equipment, and science payloads needed for extensive surface exploration. Since January 2020, the team has built 10 Starship prototypes, manufactured and tested more than 60 of Starship's Raptor engines, and conducted 6 suborbital flight tests, including 2 100-meter hops and 4 high-altitude flights. We also built a full-size Super Heavy booster as a part of a Pathfinder effort, and currently have 5 vehicles in production. This is truly an extraordinary time for America's human spaceflight program, and we can't wait to support NASA in this effort. In the meantime, let's take a look at the Falcon 9 currently awaiting launch on the pad. You're looking at a live view of Falcon 9. Our 2-stage launch vehicle stands 70 meters or 229 feet tall. And when it's fully fueled, it'll hold just over 1 million pounds of propellant that the vehicle will burn through in less than 3 minutes after liftoff. Now we prep Falcon 9 for launch in our hangar at the base of the pad, and upon completing final checkouts, Falcon 9 rolled out to the pad with the Starlink payload and went vertical. That bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is the first stage, and it previously flew 6 times before, having supported the launch of GPS-3 Space Vehicle 3, Turksat 5A, and 4 Starlink missions, the most recent being just over a month ago. The objective of the first stage is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space and then separate from the rest of the rocket. Once the first stage separates from the second stage, it will make its way back to Earth and target a landing on our drone ship. Just read the instructions, and that is what you're looking at on your screen. Now, to give some perspective, our drone ships are equivalent to the size of a football field, and that landing area is approximately 200 by 150 feet, which is big enough that a hockey rink could fit inside the landing area on the drone ship. Now, if successful, today's landing will mark the 81st recovery of an orbital-class rocket. Above the first stage is the second stage, which has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine, which ignites after the first stage separates. At full power, the Merlin vacuum engine operates with the greatest efficiency ever for an American-made hydrocarbon rocket engine. The second stage is what will carry our Starlink satellites to orbit. Now, at the top of the rocket, what you're looking at on your screen is the fairing. This is made of a carbon composite material, and the fairing protects the satellites on their way to orbit and is jettisoned approximately 3 minutes into flight. Today, we will be attempting to recover each fairing half with a contracted recovery vessel named Sheila Bordelon. Reusability is critical to what we do at SpaceX. Reusability allows SpaceX to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down costs of space access. Now at T-minus 10 minutes and about 15 seconds, let's take a look at how we're progressing in the countdown. The chief engineer held a technical poll at T-minus 1 hour, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go no-go poll at T-minus 38 minutes. Falcon 9 has been loading propellant since T-minus 35 minutes, and our fuel is a refined form of kerosene, which we call RP1. Our oxidizer is a super chilled liquid oxygen called LOX, and to densify the LOX, we chill it well below the boiling point, allowing us to fill the propellant tanks as much as possible. Now, we use the same propellant on both stages, as the second stage is primarily a short version of that first stage, which is one of our many reliability features of the Falcon design. With fuel and oxidizer on hand, we do need an ignition source to complete that fire triangle. For this, Falcon 9 uses TTEB, which you'll see at T-minus 2 seconds via the green spark right before the rocket takes off. In addition to RP1 and LOX aboard, Falcon 9 also uses helium to keep the tanks pressurized in flight and the propellant flowing correctly into the engines without air bubbles as the propellants deplete. Helium load began before the webcast went live and will continue to top off until a minute and a half before launch. Now, very shortly, we will open the pre-valves between the first stage engines and the propellant tanks. And at T-minus 7 minutes, engine chill will begin, and that's where we cool the turbo pumps and avoid thermal shocks when we start the pumps at T-minus 2 seconds to light the Merlin engines. The vehicle is healthy, and we are currently working, no issues. The range is green for launch. Weather is looking good. We're about 90% favorable for launch at T0 today. And all systems continue to be go for an on-time liftoff at 11:44 p.m. Eastern Time. If for some reason we do not launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 11:22 p.m. Eastern Time. We talked a lot about human spaceflight activities at the front of the webcast. This is why SpaceX was founded. Ultimately, our goal is to enable regular human transport to and from the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Our focus on human spaceflight played a significant role in our development of Starlink. It was critical that we build a constellation in a way that ensures space stays safe for all missions, particularly human spaceflight missions. So we approached our satellite constellation differently than others have in the past. We've talked previously on the webcast about how more satellites at a lower orbit result in better service, but characteristics of those lower orbits also help act as a natural debris removal system. Starlink satellites are designed to deorbit at the end of their useful life, but in the unlikely event that they don't, the natural gravitational pull of the Earth will pull them out of orbit so that they don't stay in space indefinitely. This is very different than traditional comm satellites at even slightly higher orbits that will be circling our Earth for hundreds of years. And unlike our Falcon 9 rocket, Starlink satellites are not designed to survive re-entry. In fact, Starlink satellites are designed to be fully demisable, meaning that they burn up when they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. Beyond making sure satellites deorbit at the end of their useful life, we also need to ensure we didn't run into any other satellites or objects in space. We cannot talk about space safety without mentioning the amazing folks at the 18th Space Squadron who keep track of space debris so that we can effectively dodge it. 3 times per day, the orbit predictions for all Starlink satellites are uploaded to space-track.org, which is managed by the 18th Space Control Squadron. The 18th Space Control Squadron screens the predictions for conjunctions with tracked objects in their vicinity. The results of the screening are sent to each Starlink satellite so that they can avoid any objects that might cross their orbital path. SpaceX also uploads its own data to be used by the 18th Space Control Squadron for collision avoidance screening for other operators. In addition to working with the 18th Space Control Squadron, SpaceX is also working with NASA on these efforts. In March of 2021, Starlink and NASA signed a joint agreement to ensure deep levels of coordination, cooperation, and data sharing as it relates to space safety and collision avoidance. This agreement was signed after many months of SpaceX sharing all of the details of our satellite operations to ensure that NASA has a full understanding of our approach to space safety. This agreement helps establish a baseline of how all satellite operators might operate most safely, particularly as it relates to human spaceflight and the operation of critical science satellites. We are extremely proud of our efforts to not only provide internet access to the disconnected, but also ensure space remains a place where human spaceflight continues to grow. Now we're currently at T-minus 5 minutes from liftoff, and Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. We're currently waiting for the transporter erector, or the TE, to retract. The TE is that structure that's right next to the vehicle on your screen. It's slightly behind the vehicle or to the left on your screen. First, the TE clamps will start to open, and then the transporter erector will begin to retract away from the rocket slightly. And then at T0, hydraulics will pull that TE farther away from Falcon 9 to clear the way as the vehicle lifts off. Now we use the TE to roll the rocket out to the pad and raise it to its vertical launch position. And you can see on your screen that the clamps are opening there. Once those clamps are open, the TE will start to retract back. Now, the TE also provides liquids, gases, electrical connections to the second stage, as well as air conditioning to the payload fairing. Now, it looks like those clamps are now complete opening up, so that transporter erector looks very, very slight, but you can kind of see it moving back on your screen. Now, the first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Super chilled liquid oxygen is our propellant oxidizer. When its temperature is increased, it turns from a liquid to a gas, which is why you see those white clouds around Falcon 9. And that's because that liquid oxygen is meeting that warmer, humid ambient air. First stage should finish prop loading at T-minus 3 minutes in a few seconds here, and then second stage at T-minus 2 minutes. And at T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will be in startup.
Togo, bleed verification.
And what startup means is that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. There's that call out. That LOX load is now complete on both first and second stage. Now, just inside T-minus 2 seconds, we light the Merlin M1D engines, and we use TTEB, as I mentioned earlier, as our ignition fluid. And when it mixes with the oxygen, it will burn a green colored flame. And then we allow fuel into the thrust chamber, and the engine comes up to full power for liftoff at T0. The Starlink payload continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather is still looking good for T0 today, and the range has cleared the surrounding ground, water, and airspace and are green for launch.
Stage 2 lock load complete.
There's that call out that LOX load is now complete. Now that LOX loading is complete, we will start to vent the LOX line on the transporter erector. So as I mentioned, those white clouds earlier, you're going to see a lot more of it here shortly. And there you can kind of see it on your left-hand side. And there's that venting you can see from that LOX line. Coming up here in about 10 seconds or so, Falcon 9 will go into startup, and the first and second stage will begin to pressurize for launch.
Falcon 9's in startup.
There's that call out. The autonomous internal flight computers have now taken over the launch countdown.
Stage 2 press for flight.
Falcon 9, Starlink, LD is go for launch.
And a great call out. We are go for launch here shortly, meaning all systems are ready for T0.
T-minus 30 seconds.
At T-minus 30 seconds, let's listen into the terminal count and watch as Falcon 9 takes our stack of Starlink satellites out into space.
Stage 1 press for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Falcon 9 is configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff. Godspeed, Apollo 11 microfinal Colin. May the pursuit of exploration live on.
Vehicle's pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying our stack of Starlink satellites to orbit. The next event coming up here shortly is Max Q. Max Q is the maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle sees on ascent. So throttling down those engines helps us pass through that large structural load.
Vehicle has reached maximum aerodynamic pressure.
And there's that call out that we passed through Max Q. In about a minute, we'll have 3 events happening within seconds of each other. The first will be MECO, or main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, and SES-1, or second engine start 1. Now, MECO is where we shut down all 9 of the engines on the first stage.
MVAC engine chill has started.
Just to call out that the MVAC chill has begun on that second stage engine. So for MECO, we shut down all 9 of the engines, and that slows the vehicle down in preparation for that second event, which is stage separation. Stage separation is where the first stage separates from the second stage, and first stage will begin its journey back home, heading towards our drone ship Just Read the Instructions, while stage 2 continues on its journey with the third event, SES-1, or second engine start 1. And that is where we light up that MVAC engine, and it propels the second stage along with the Starlink satellites towards its drop-off orbit.
And Miko.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
We had Miko and stage separation. On your left-hand screen is a view from the first stage. On your right-hand screen is a view of that second stage engine. You kind of saw a glow of that T-Teb, that green flame, when we ignited that engine. We're coming up on fairing deploy here shortly.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there you could see confirmation on your screen that we have successfully deployed those fairing halves. And as a reminder, we will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today with a contracted recovery vessel named Sheila Bordelon. On your left-hand screen, it is a little dark over there on the East Coast because it is nighttime, but we did get some glimpses of the sunlight hitting those grid fins. See if we can get some more views of that in a little bit. As stage 2
acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
As stage 2 takes our Starlink satellites to their targeted drop-off orbit, stage 1 will make its way back to Earth by executing 2 burns. The first is the entry burn, and that's where we light up 3 of the 9 M1D engines. And this will help to slow the stage down as it re-enters back into the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere. The second of those 2 burns for that first stage is called the landing burn. And this is where a single engine, the center engine, will reignite and bring the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to touch down on that drone ship. As a reminder, we are attempting to land on Just Read the Instructions tonight. And those M1D engines do have a thrust of 190,000 pounds. So that lighting up that one single engine slows the entire vehicle down just enough to touch down on that drone ship. Stage 2 is still looking good, and what you're seeing on your screen is a view of that MVAC engine.
Vehicle's following a nominal trajectory.
Now, if you're just catching up with us, we had a successful launch of Falcon 9 from Cape Canaveral Space Launch Complex 40, and you're looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 second stage as it is making its way to deliver our Starlink payload to orbit. Stage 1 is currently cruising back to Earth towards our drone ship Just Read the Instructions out in the Atlantic Ocean. We're just about a minute away from the next event on that first stage. That'll be the entry burn. Again, Starlink satellites are going to a LEO orbit or low Earth orbit, about 550 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Now, most satellites are at 36,000 kilometers or in a geo or geostationary orbit. We are just about roughly 30 seconds away from that entry burn beginning. And on your left-hand screen, there is the first stage. It is a little dark. You can see some glimpses of the nitrogen gas burst that you see there.
Stage 1, FTS is safe.
Stage 1 entry burn.
And you can see on your left-hand screen, the entry burn has begun as those 3 engines light up that view for us. This entry burn will last about 20 seconds long.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And that concludes...
Stage 2 continues to follow a nominal trajectory.
That concludes the entry burn, and then we also got to call out that stage 2 is still nominal. The next event coming up will be in about a minute from now. That'll be the landing burn, the start of the landing burn on the first stage. And what you're looking at live on your screen is a view from the second stage looking aft at the MVAC engine. That MVAC engine has a thrust of 220,500 pounds of thrust in a vacuum. It's very, very powerful engine taking our Starlink satellites to their targeted drop-off orbit.
Stage 1 transonic.
Still getting good call-outs on that first stage. We're about 15 seconds or so away from that landing burn beginning on the first stage. Stage 2 still looking good.
Stage 1 landing burn.
The landing burn has begun. Let's watch and see if this Falcon 9 can land on our drone ship. Just read the instructions. And a really cool onboard view.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
And there you can see the first stage Falcon 9 has landed for its 7th time. This marks our 81st successful recovery of an orbital class rocket, and again the 7th flight and 7th landing of this booster. And then we heard a good call out for SECO. That's second engine cutoff.
Nominal parking orbit insertion.
And a good orbital insertion.
Loss of signal, Cape.
Now stage 2 is going to coast in this orbit for the next 35 minutes or so. So while that happens, we'll keep you posted on where we are in the coast phase. We'll see you back here at T plus 45 minutes for a second stage relay.